Naimo, it is such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me here on Fashion Talks today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I'd love to hear a little bit about your desire or how you auditioned for Project Runway. How did this journey start for you?
um, for me, it started with I just saw the post, to be honest, on Instagram one day, and then I messaged my friend, and I'm like, "Should I apply?" And I remember applying. I think it was like 2 days before it closed, and I remember just saying, "You know what? I've been doing this for over no, I think it's been over 15 years of designing." And I thought to myself, you know what? Let me just put myself out there, and I occasionally do crazy stuff sometimes, but this was a moment for me to like maybe like get out of my comfort zone, I guess. I don't know, but I took a big risk and I actually made it in, so I was happy. Yeah.
It's a totally big risk. Like, congratulations for being a part of the cast. Like, what an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it really is. Like looking back now and I'm like, "Oh my God." I honestly when I sent in my application, I remember um holding up my surgery like, "This is my baby." I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah, that was my audition tape, and I'm like, "Oh, they must think this girl's weird." So, yeah.
Well, I loved seeing all of the amazing work that you did on the show. Something I love asking everyone who comes as a guest on Fashion Talks is I believe that all of us who love fashion and work in fashion have a moment when we realize that clothing holds more power than just covering our bodies and protecting us from the element, that it has a greater energy for us. And I'm wondering if you have a moment where you had that realization.
Like I'm pretty tall, like I'm 5'11", and I think for me it was sort of my need to find pants that were long enough. That's where it started off, and wanting to, and because there were like limited areas that were available for like longer inseam. And so then I think that's where my passion came. It's a way of expressing myself. It's a way of showing my identity because I tend to be very reserved and quiet. That I like it is honestly, it's a great like it's my way of expressing myself, and it's my way of showing my individuality, right? And I think it was an outlet I used to express myself for many years, and I think that was when my like I guess I don't know. I think I messed up that question. I'm so sorry.
Is there an outfit that you remember maybe that you created for yourself or one that you wore when you were when you were young where you felt like your identity was really aligned, where you felt really good in your
I,
outfit?
you know what it was? It was actually no, I lied. It was actually a shoe I modified. It was I remember buying a pink suede shoe. And I bought like 2 pairs of it, but I because I couldn't find a different color. And so then I remember buying a dye. It was like one of those leather dyes that like dip it in liquid. Anyways, I made my own blue suede shoe. I felt like Elvis
The
for a second, but that's
I'm
where it was.
singing along in my head with you right now, Nemo.
I know it was really embarrassing, but I thought I was the coolest thing, but I looked like a mess because it was patchy and weird, dyeing suede. Yeah, and it's like the way to dye, it was like a liquid dye, dye for, yeah, and it was blue, but it wasn't the right blue, and it came out very patchy because to cover pink and blue, it was horrible.
But it's still such an inspiring story about
Yeah,
how we can take things and make them our
yeah,
own to
for
lift
sure.
our own spirits, right?
Yeah, it was nice. It made me happy. It was a pointed toe suede flat shoes because I'm tall and I didn't want heels. So yeah, that's what it was. It was nice.
You spoke a lot on the show about your Somali culture, and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more with us about what that culture means to you and maybe some things we didn't see on the show that were part of your journey there.
I think for me, it's part of who I am. It's my identity. It's my background. It's how I was raised, and I think it has a big impact on how I express some of my designs through my culture. Not necessarily through African prints, of course, but it's through like more couture, making my own materials out of inspiration from my culture. And I think part of it is I remember growing up in Canada, sometimes you get kind of like forced to blend in and
Mhm.
in the melting pot. It's not I know Canadian I think for Canada, we don't encourage that melting pot society. We encourage individuality, but sometimes when you're in a groups of people that are not the same as you, you're kind of forced to assimilate, I guess, right? So I think
Mhm.
part of it was shying away from my culture for so many years growing up, and then the older I got, the more I appreciated some of the customs that were there, the beauty behind it, and like sometimes tradition doesn't necessarily mean um old fashioned or like outdated. It also brings you back to your history and taking pride in where you come from and your heritage. And I think that's where I took it the older I got. But I remember shying away from it, not expressing myself as a kid growing up and going to school here in Canada. I think it's more so the older you get, the more you appreciate the history behind your culture, and then you have like centuries, decades, many things that can actually like reflect back on where you came from. And I think that to me, it's beauty, right? It comes down to
Mhm.
like even tribes, right? Those tribes take you back to your lineage and stuff. And I think there's that appreciation in my
Well,
culture.
I hear you talking about the importance of belonging, that it's almost like belonging in two places at once
Yeah.
and bringing them together.
Yeah. I think it's pretty easy in the sense that like people, at least where nowadays people accept wanting, like I think there's a sense of acceptance in the sense in the aspect of like people want to learn more and they want to learn, and learning actually builds tolerance. So I think that's where it comes from, I guess. I don't know. But I think you can be both. You can embrace your culture while being a Canadian, and I think that's what makes Canada as great as it is.
What was it about being on the show that impacted you as a designer? What are you going to take with you from this experience?
I think for me, part of it was pushing myself to be seen. And I think that was the most difficult thing that I've had in my career because I like to be in the background. Um, I like to do things without nobody knowing. And I think realistically in the fashion industry that doesn't take you far. But I've been fortunate enough to do so many great things in my career without anyone knowing. And so in that aspect, I think I just wanted to push myself beyond a limit that I kept like limiting myself to. And I think that's what gave me the idea that I could be there. Even as scary as it was for me at the time, I allowed myself to be seen. And I think that was what I took away from it.
That's an incredibly courageous way to go about life. Like, that's really inspiring. Is there a moment from the show where you feel like, that was a moment I really pushed myself and I'm really proud of that moment?
Um, I think I think I was too much stuck in my own head. And I think seeing myself filmed, it was sort of like, oh, I need to be gentler. Like I need to be kinder to myself. I think that's what I took away from that. Um, and I think honestly, I still showed my individuality. Like for the denim challenge, I made something very heavy material look flowy, and it's not something you see regularly. And it's for me, that was an individual, it was something that spoke to me. It was me, it was an identity of myself in that garment. And I think I was very proud of myself and I was happy.
You should be. Can you talk a little bit about the red cape that you made for the second
Mm.
challenge that unfortunately we didn't see walk down the runway?
I was gonna call it hood red, hood red riding. Anyways, it was terrible. I don't know if it was terrible. I just wanted, you know what I was going for? That 70s glam where it was like it was flowy. It was like I'm remembering Cher with like, that's what I was thinking in my head at the time when I was making that, like that light, flowy, kind of simple, but simple. Oh my god, I have to stay away from that word. But yes, I was going for I was going for more of that 70s look and that feel, like evening out, like a shawl, but like in a cape, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
unfortunately, it wasn't used, but red is my favorite color, so I have no regrets.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see more pieces show up on your Instagram and out in the world.
Yes.
What are you going to take with you from this show?
Um, I think what I took away from it after like stepping back was I can put myself out there. I can be brave. and I think that's what I took. Also, I need to stop overthinking. But I find when you're in your own like sewing space, I find that you have different things to drown out your thoughts, and usually I listen to loud music to drown out my crazy thoughts. So I think not having that and being surrounded by, especially the first challenge, not knowing anybody there
Yeah.
was really kind of hard to adjust. And it's not your own, also, it's not your creative space, right? So I think what I took away from that was to be kinder to myself and to not overthink, because overthinking is the enemy.
It's
No,
a
for
very
real.
unique it's a very unique space to create in. What would you like us to know or appreciate about participating in the show as we continue to watch? Like what do you want us to know about being in the workroom or in that environment that is so maybe underappreciated when we watch at home?
I think part of it is how resilient some of those designers are to be able to work even under the worst type of like time constraint, right? And they've been able to produce amazing garments. And I think that is, people don't understand the level of time constraint that you deal with, the stress, not having your friends and family there to comfort you. And I think that builds, it breaks you down a little bit each time. And I think to be able to keep pushing forward, I'm very proud of all of us, honestly. Yeah,
It's a very unique and unusual
it
environment
is.
to be creative in, I would imagine.
No, for sure. It really was.
What does fashion mean to you?
This question, I was thinking about it. Fashion for me is freedom. That's one word I would describe it. It's freedom. Um, I feel like there are people like me that can relate. Like I'm a very introverted person. I don't really express myself if I don't have that level of comfort with some people, so it's hard to understand who I am. And I think when it comes to fashion, it's my freedom. Like it was a way to show myself, to show sides of me that I usually keep to myself, and I think that's what I would say. Freedom.
We just have a couple of more minutes with you, Namo. And when you say freedom, I can't help but think that you're also, you work with shoes, as you even just said off the top there with the pink come blue suede shoes. How does footwear play into that concept of freedom?
You know what it was? I think part of it also was like we grew up in a single parent household, and I think my obsession was always having nice shoes. Not that my feet ain't big, but but I can find a size. I'm a size 8, sometimes 8.5, but you know what it is? I think it was sort of, I just wanted better shoes as a kid. That's where it started off, and that's how I started my business. I wanted to make beautiful pieces that people could um, put on and walk proudly in them. No matter how bad your day is, you have beautiful shoes on, and it changes your mood at the end of the day, right? And that's where I started my business.
It certainly does change your mood. I hope that you are going to walk through the rest of this day and the rest of the year and your very, very bright future
You.
with so much pride and so much freedom. And I can't wait to watch and see what happens with your career next, Namo. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Taalrumiq, it is so wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for being here today on Fashion Talks.
It's nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
So, one of the things that you mentioned in the show a few times is that you wanted to be someone that was proof that it's never too late to give up on your dreams, which is an amazing, amazing message. And I'm wondering how that motivation played into your auditioning for Project Runway and what that journey was like.
Yeah, I had a bit of a later start. I've always had dreams of being in fashion and doing fashion shows. I've always been creating. I just haven't had the opportunity until later in my life. So just to be here is so very special, and I'm very proud of that. And my thought process during the auditioning process, I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I'll try, I'll go for it, and I know that, I'll be proud of myself for even putting myself out there. and I never expected to get a call back. I just wanted to experience, like, good job, you tried. And I thought maybe there's someone out there who might see something in my work and think of me for other projects. I was open to where this would lead. And to my surprise, it led to being on the show with all these other talented designers.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I've asked other people I ask everyone actually who comes on the podcast is I love knowing if there is a memory or a moment from your past where you became aware that fashion holds more power for us than simply covering our body to protect us from the weather. Do you have a memory where that became kind of clear for you?
Yeah, I have a few memories. Something in particular that sticks with me is when I did the fashion show at the Arctic Arts Summit in 2022. Um, as my collection was being shown on the runway, there was some Inuit elders who had their cell phones and they were recording, and they had the biggest smiles on their faces. And then in the audience, someone also yelled out this big whoop, like how in our culture we would let out these cries of joy, excitement, victory during our traditional dance. And for me, that was so powerful. Like, it's more than clothing. People were of all ages were seeing our culture, feeling represented, just seeing the beauty and pride in the clothing. So that really stuck with me, like the power of fashion.
I watched an interview that you did a few months ago at Casaloma during the Runway for Resiliency, and you talked about how your ancestors sewed for survival, and now you were here sewing and presenting, high fashion. And I was wondering what that meant to you. And when you talk about high fashion, what does that conjure for you in your mind?
Yeah, so for Inuvialuit, our way of life has changed so rapidly just within a few generations. For example, my mom was born in a tent on the tundra when my grandparents were still living a nomadic lifestyle, like with the seasons. And so my grandmother would create clothing for her family for survival. They made their living during the fur trade era. And so for me to be here in this space, present using the same skills, the same talent, the same passion, and then creating beautiful clothing that I'm able to present as fine art or high fashion, like, in this setting, is really incredible. And I didn't imagine this for myself, for me to come this far, considering, how recent our way of life has been totally different from the runway.
You live in a part of the country that I'm going to suggest hardly anyone listening has any familiarity with. Can you paint us a bit of a picture about where you live in the north and the role that like fashion plays for you up there?
Yes, so the Arctic communities are relatively isolated. My community didn't even have a permanent highway until 2017, so there was only seasonal access. So a lot of uh, like pop culture and trends came to us much later. And just because of how tiny and isolated our communities are, we don't have a lot of resources. So we make do with what we have around us. And that's exactly how my ancestors survived. They made do with the resources around them. But still, even in sewing for survival, their creativity and their artistry and ingenuity was evident. So I'm kind of taking these same uh, concepts and skills, and I incorporate that into my art practice. And growing up, we had one channel, but I did see Jeannie Becker on fashion television, so that was my, like, introduction to the big world of fashion. And I was always so mesmerized. I wanted to be like in fashion. And I had some young aunties who always had cool clothes, and they would let us dress up. Me and my cousins, we'd dress up in their dresses and heels and put on fashion shows. So this is really like a lifelong dream come true to be here. And yeah, I'm very proud to carry all my mother, my aunties, my grandmothers, my ancestors with me to these spaces.
The ripple effect of Jeannie Becker and fashion television is very wide and very strong.
Yeah, she made such an impact and still to this day, it's wonderful.
Oh, for me too. Can you talk a little bit about how being on Project Runway Canada has influenced you, or, how you've grown as a designer as a result of being in this like very unique environment that is the TV show?
Being on Project Runway Canada has made me realize that people see my talent, my potential. That's why I'm here along with all these other designers. I was given this opportunity to show a part of who I am and what I can do. And I think that, it's still sinking in that I was a part of this. And I'm so very grateful. And this has also led to some really deep self reflection. Why did I feel that this was important? Why did I want to be a part of this? And also how much self doubt I had, especially in this high pressure environment. And so I kind of learned how I work. What's more conducive to the greatest work that I'm going to create.
Well, when you're in a pressure cooker and I think it's kind of a metaphor for life, right? Like when you're in a pressure cooker of an environment, hopefully you can't help but grow and discover elements and edges about yourself that allow you to, evolve as an artist and as a designer and as a human on this earth.
Yeah, totally. Like it's how they refine silver by fire, right? So you're in this high pressure environment, you got to think fast, the conditions are changing, you got to be resourceful, you're not used to all your comforts of your own home studio and tools. And at the same time, it's hard not to compare yourself to other designers, but I have to say I felt so much support and love from all the other designers. We're all we all want the same thing. We all have this passion and the love for what we do, and it's been such a positive experience that's going to stay with me and impact my work, going forward.
Was there anything that you'd like as people watch at home? Because we see such a snapshot of the intensity and the activity that goes on. Is there anything that you'd like people to, really appreciate or keep in mind as we continue to watch the show at home?
Yeah, I just want everyone to know how hard we were all working, and everyone was trying their best, and some of that might not show. Like there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes, and like I mentioned, we all supported each other. We all wanted the same thing. Even though it was a competition, people were still respectful and, supported each other. I have to shout out Leland, who was there for all of us, for helping to change the needle on the sewing machine to different sewing techniques. So, yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful kind of evolution of the talent show, because so often a competition does get, like, it could get nasty, right? So that the
Hmm.
fashion community on set really like comes together. Like, what a beautiful extra element to this opportunity.
I think so. And when I went on the show, I really allowed my upbringing and cultural values to guide my behavior. I knew that my elders are going to be watching, my community, our youth, and I wanted to conduct myself in a way that, I can be proud to say, yes, I am Taalrumiq. I am from this community. I am Inuvialuk. And, I wanted to reflect that. And also, I think you don't lose anything when you support others, even though it's a competition. So,
Absolutely. When the pie gets bigger, so does everybody's piece, right?
exactly.
I just have a couple of more minutes here with you, Dalarumic. So, first of all, I want to ask about those gorgeous earrings you're wearing, because your earring game was incredibly strong through the series. And I'm wondering, are they your designs? Are they an artist that's from your community?
Yes, so I'm wearing She Was a Free Spirit. She is an Inuvialuk designer, also from my community, and she's my cousin. So Erica, she as well, she's inspired by our ancestors, our culture, and the same talents. And yeah, I'm really lucky to be adorned by her beautiful work.
And just before I let you go, Dalarumic, what in one word or two, what does fashion mean to you?
Fashion is life. Even though everybody wears clothing, but even in our clothing there's a chance to let your personality shine through, let our creativity shine through. And you know a garment can make you feel confident and strong. It can provide comfort. So it's, to me, it's life, and I love it.
I couldn't agree more. And I know that was something that Namo was referencing in our conversation earlier, and that I've heard countless designers and lovers of fashion say time and time and time again, is that it is such an important part of self and identity and mood and empowerment and protection. It is so all those things. And that's why, I think having Project Runway Canada back to really highlight that for people who don't work in the fashion industry and can see the process on screen is such a gift that you all have given us.
Yes, and fashion really can transcend borders and barriers, and it brings us together, for a common goal. And it's just the love of creating. And yeah, fashion's life.
Fashion is life. Well, thank you so so much, Dalarumic, for being with me today, and I can't wait to see what the future brings for you.
Koyanaini, thank you.